I'm here today to talk to you about Asian parents, which is probably fitting since we're here at an Asia CEO Forum. So looking out in the room, I'm guessing many of you have Asian parents, right? Like me, Asian parents had a perception when I was a child of being conservative and not big risk takers. But today I want to talk to you not just about Asian parents, but their capacity to experience change. So I was born in Saigon, South Vietnam, the youngest of 4 kids to these parents. My father was a judge in the South Vietnamese government, and my mom helped raise 4 kids in Saigon. But they experienced a traumatic change in April 1975 when my family had to flee from Vietnam the night before Saigon fell to North Vietnamese Communist forces. So my parents took our 4 kids, immigrated to the US with the help of the US government, resettled into California, and had to experience the change of trying to build a new life in a new country. And one of the first things they had to experience in terms of change was a new money system. I remember very vividly my parents having to pay for groceries with food stamps issued by the US government when they still needed government assistance. And then they graduated to having a bank account, and I remember my mom writing checks at the grocery store to actually pay for food. And then they eventually got credit cards and were able to pay with plastic and felt like they really had made it in the United States. And over the next decades, they experienced many more changes in life, in technology, and the world as they continued to raise their kids. One of the biggest changes, of course, happened in the 1990s, which was the emergence of the internet. And I was a young lawyer at the time looking for ways to make a name for myself. I thought, wow, that's such a great field to be working in. And I was really fascinated at the time with the concept of e-commerce, this magical phenomenon that you could actually shop and pay for things on the internet. I also remember thinking that my immigrant parents were never going to put their credit card information on the internet. But fast forward 2 decades later, we have a robust global e-commerce system. My parents sometimes will even try shopping on the internet. But today, we are at the brink of something even more powerful, a more powerful change that will have e-commerce turn into what we call at nChain B-commerce, Bitcoin commerce. A global payment system with our vision of Bitcoin powering a transaction network where the transactions are fast, the fees are low, and the confirmation's instant. It's a powerful vision that I want to share with you today, and it's a vision that we believe is for all, meaning all people, especially those in developing and next-generation countries, and more importantly, all businesses. Bitcoin should not be perceived as anti-bank or anti-establishment. Instead, businesses in all sectors, whether you're a bank, a payment services provider, technology company, merchant, retailer, consumer products, entertainment, media, companies in all industries, I'm here to tell you, should be embracing their role in this B-commerce world. To get to B-commerce, we need a number of building blocks, both from a technology perspective as well as an industry ecosystem perspective. And that's what we at nChain Group are focused on. We're using our research, innovation, and technology to create these building blocks to achieve what I want to see as enterprise-level blockchain adoption and innovation. But the question arises, what do you build on? What is the foundation for these blocks? And as you've known, if you've been following the Bitcoin world, there's now more than one variation of Bitcoin. Last August, the first fork of the original Bitcoin chain happened, and now there have been many more. We believe that only one Bitcoin has the power and functionality to enable this B-commerce world, and that is Bitcoin Cash, with its vision for massive on-chain scaling of the network. So today, I want to share with you why Bitcoin Cash is the key to enabling this B-commerce world that will bring change experienced by all of us in this room and by parents no matter where they're from Vietnam, Philippines, or anywhere else in the world. To understand this, let's start at the very beginning. This is the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper that was published in 2008, which first announced Bitcoin to the world. Its title says something very important. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That phrase in the white paper is critical because it defines the vision of Bitcoin as electronic cash, meaning it needed to be used quickly, easily, and cheaply in daily life. But that's not what has quite happened with Bitcoin. And the answer to that, as to why that hasn't happened, lies in the construction of the blockchain. The original Bitcoin chain, which we now call Bitcoin Core, because it's controlled by the Bitcoin Core Development Group, has stuck at 1 megabyte blocks, meaning that every 10 minutes, transactions on the network are collected into a block of data, added to the prior blocks, thus creating this chain of blocks, which is the blockchain, the decentralized ledger on which Bitcoin operates. But 1 megabyte isn't very big. You can't fit that many transactions to power a global payment system if you have blocks that are only 1 megabyte in size every 10 minutes. So the question arises, do you create a bigger blockchain with bigger blocks, as you see here in yellow, to create greater throughput? And that has been the dilemma, and it is created a practical impact. With the current 1 megabyte block size in the Bitcoin Core chain, you can average only about 3 transactions a second, and at its maximum speed, on average about 7 transactions a second. Compare that to the global Visa network, which averages at least 2,000 transactions a second, and during the peak periods at holiday shopping seasons, for example, 56,000 transactions a second. With the legacy Bitcoin chain at its 1 mega block size, you just never are going to achieve the throughput for this global scale. And it in fact has led to an internal war, a civil war within the Bitcoin community over the last few years, with 2 camps. There's the small blockers who want to keep the block size small on Bitcoin, and they believe that the Bitcoin network should instead just be a settlement layer, where you process all the fast transactions elsewhere off of the chain or on a side chain solution and periodically settle those transactions onto the blockchain. And on the other side of the camp are what I call the big blockers, the people who believe in raising the block size of the Bitcoin network, and the original Satoshi Nakamoto vision that the Bitcoin network should be a single peer-to-peer electronic cash system where all the transactions are processed directly onto the blockchain. We at nChain fit squarely into that camp, and so do many of the other biggest names in Bitcoin. There's a practical reason for that. This is a visual depiction of the mempool over the last number of years. The mempool is the queue, the waiting backlog place where transactions wait when they're waiting to get confirmed. So if I'm trying to send someone here in the room a transaction on the Bitcoin network, only so many will fit in a block every 10 minutes. All the other ones have to wait in this thing called the mempool. And it can take hours sometimes to get out of the mempool and get added to a block and confirmed to the blockchain. As you can see by this diagram, the last 2 years shown there, 2016 and 2017, the size of the bubbles are getting bigger. That represents the size of the mempool, meaning it's taking longer and longer to validate transactions onto the blockchain. This has a practical effect on the fees it costs to actually send a Bitcoin transaction. Fees are paid to the miners, these people who run server nodes all around the world that maintain the decentralized ledger. This is the fees from just the last 1 year period by month, starting in February of 2017 through last month, January. As you can see, particularly starting in October, November, and December, and then really in January, there were sharp increases in the amount of fees that it took to send a Bitcoin transaction. The economic reality of this is very simple to understand if you think about the vision of being able to buy a $5 cup of Starbucks coffee using Bitcoin. If I want to do it, it can cost me upwards of $20 just to send the transaction, which means at its current rate of growth and this problem on the Bitcoin network, you're not going to be able to use Bitcoin for daily transactions, and you won't achieve this vision of a true electronic cash system. So that is what led to the fork in August of last year that created Bitcoin Cash. We visualize it this way. You had the original chain going, Bitcoin Core continues on with its current methodology, and the Bitcoin Cash chain is being advocated by proponents across the world because it achieves a different vision. The big difference is in the approach and how you scale the network. Block sizes are going to be bigger on Bitcoin Cash. The Bitcoin Core chain remains at 1 or perhaps 2 megabytes. Bitcoin Cash was birthed with a default block size of 8 megabytes, significantly larger. And there's already a plan in place among the independent developer groups for Bitcoin Cash around the world to begin raising that. There's going to be a software protocol upgrade in May of this year in which the target is to increase that block size to 32 megabytes, a significant leap but still not quite enough to reach Visa and MasterCard levels of throughput. But what if we could believe in something even bigger? What if we could believe that 1 gigabyte-sized blocks are possible on the Bitcoin Cash network? That is 1,000 megabytes. And we do believe that's possible. And in fact, with Bitcoin Unlimited, a group of developers that believe in this massive scaling, we have co-funded a testnet initiative to test the security and viability of such large blocks in a gigablock testnet initiative. And just last October, Bitcoin Unlimited, with that testnet, successfully mined and propagated the world's first 1 gigabyte block. If we achieve a Bitcoin Cash network with that size of blocks, you would have throughput capacity of over 10,000 transactions a second and 864 million transactions a day, faster than the average speed of Visa on its average days. But I believe the future can even be bigger than that. What if you dreamt of the possibility of 1 terabyte-sized blocks? Sounds like a dinosaur, but it's not. It's 1,000,000 megabytes. That wasn't even our vision. It was originally the vision of Johannes Vermorel, who's the CEO of a company in France named Locad, which specializes in quantitative supply chain management software and technology. He wrote this blog post in December of last year, predicting that terabyte-sized blocks are possible, but only on the Bitcoin Cash chain because of its vision for massive scaling. What does that mean for everyone in this room, as both business people, as ordinary people? Well, it means that terabyte-sized blocks, if that's achieved, can contain in each block every 10 minutes 4 billion Bitcoin Cash transactions and provide capacity of 7 million transactions a second. Doing the calculations, Johannes determined that if you assume a worldwide population of 10 billion humans, terabyte-sized blocks offer the potential of over 50 transactions per human per day, and that would be sufficient to cover all human-driven activities. Now, most of us are not doing 50 financial payment transactions a day. So what this means is that the Bitcoin Cash network can also act as a powerful data infrastructure, a data network to power things such as Internet of Things communications and other types of data transactions we have to experience on a daily basis. If that world happens, the value of Bitcoin Cash will skyrocket to levels we don't even perceive today. That is a vision of what ecommerce could be. And we believe in it so much that we've partnered with Locad as well as with CoinGeek, the fast-growing cryptocurrency media site, to support a project that is going to solve some of the technical problems that will be experienced when you have a network with blocks of that size. CoinGeek is funding up to $5 million towards this initiative called the Terra Project. We're not going to get to 1 terabyte blocks anytime soon, but we are preparing for this vision of dramatic change at an enterprise level that will experience a dramatic growth in Bitcoin Cash's usage and value. So that's the difference between these two chains. The Bitcoin Cash chain is proceeding with a vision of low fees, irreversible transactions, and transactions that are fast. But it's not going to be enough, and I want to spend the remainder of my time talking about a few other building blocks that will be necessary to achieve this e-commerce world. One is merchant adoption, and frankly, merchant education as to why Bitcoin Cash is such a powerful tool for them. Here's a good comparison. Credit card payments cost a merchant approximately 2 to 3% per transaction, plus some base fee, which can be as high as 30 cents in the US. For Bitcoin, technically, merchants can accept it for free. Now, there's usually some type of service provider that a merchant will use to make it easier for them to accept Bitcoin. So Coinbase, for example, just launched Coinbase Commerce as a merchant tool, and BitPay is one of the leading solution providers in the United States. They make it simpler, but they take a fee, usually about 1%. And then if a merchant wants to exchange the Bitcoin into their local fiat currency, then they usually have to pay some additional fee for that. So if you compare the numbers, accepting Bitcoin will save merchants probably about 1% per transaction, which doesn't sound like a lot, except when you think about enterprise scale usage of major e-commerce companies. That is a significant savings and also helpful to small vendors as well. merchant adoption did start happening. Before 2014, it was just small vendors that were accepting Bitcoin. And then a big event happened in 2014 when Overstock became the first significant e-commerce retailer to announce, hey, I will accept Bitcoin. And that led over the next year or two to other large companies such as Dell, Dish, Microsoft, Expedia, Time, and Newegg, and charities such as Wikipedia and the American Red Cross saying, we'll accept Bitcoin as well. But then something happened. In December of last year, JP Morgan released a report observing that retailer acceptance of BTC, that's the legacy Bitcoin, was declining. And a great example happened in the same month, which is that online gaming distributor Steam stopped accepting Bitcoin for payments, precisely because the fees had risen from what used to be only about 20 cents to $20 just to take a transaction. And that's because of this significant fee increase that I've been talking about. This diagram illustrates the differences between the major cryptocurrencies. BTC, the original legacy Bitcoin, average transaction fees in yellow and median transaction fees in blue, $44 and up as an average. And this is taken on December 26th of last year, just a couple of months ago, the day after Christmas. The average the median transaction fee on that date was over $23. You can't buy a cup of coffee or run a global commerce system when you have fees that are that high. In comparison, Bitcoin Cash at the bottom of the chart had average and median transaction fees that day that were less than 30 cents, in the 20-cent range. That's the difference between the visions of these two forms of Bitcoin. We also did a math exercise to help illustrate the impact of this. I took the number of transactions that Amazon did online over Black Friday shopping weekend last year, over Thanksgiving, the biggest shopping days of the year in the United States. They processed 12.78 million online transactions over 2 days. Well, if they had accepted the legacy Bitcoin BTC, on those 2 days, they would have averaged $6 per transaction in processing fees. If they'd accepted Bitcoin Cash for those transactions, the fees then were only about 20 cents, meaning the total would have only been $2.5 million compared to $76 million had they accepted the legacy Bitcoin. That's a savings of over 90%. But they could have saved even more because right now Bitcoin wallets haven't been reconfigured properly to address the lower fees and sometimes no fee transaction that can happen on Bitcoin Cash. One day when that happens, those fees could drop to as low as 2 cents, meaning Amazon in a future world could have only cost it $250,000 for that weekend of transactions. That is a significant impact on the bottom line of merchants and why we believe so much in Bitcoin Cash as the answer to this e-commerce world, because merchants are going to pay lower transaction fees, their foreign currency exchange costs will be minimized with instant confirmation, which is possible on Bitcoin Cash. The danger of chargebacks to merchants will also be minimized in reducing financial exposure. And also, auto-renewing payments will be easier to do and faster for merchants. It's a world we live in now where you have subscription plans, for example, to Hulu or Netflix or Dropbox or Spotify, and you put in your credit card and have that auto-renewed. Well, in a future world, those things can be powered automatically with smart contracts on the blockchain and payments done automatically, so you don't have to chase consumers for an expired credit card. In fact, at nChain, we have a pending patent application for an invention just to address that unique use case of blockchain. Also, we're going to need more security improvements to build this e-commerce world, because you've heard about cryptocurrency hacks, and they scare the public, and they scare businesses. So we're looking towards solutions for that. In fact, it's the subject of one of our first major partnerships, which is with the SBI Group, the major internet financial services conglomerate in Japan. We are working with them right now to design and help them implement a next-generation secure wallet system for cryptocurrency, using some of the inventions our team has come up with to do things such as splitting keys and creating deterministic keys so that two parties and nodes on a network never really have to exchange the common secret between each other, such as the private keys you need to control a Bitcoin transaction. We also know that we need better user interfaces, because we need a world where parents, like mine and like yours, are comfortable using Bitcoin. That means it needs to be easy to use, as opposed to today where there are some functional wallets and applications, but we need a world of better user interfaces. So we at nChain are supporting things like investing in companies like Centbee. It's a South African company which has the best and most social and friendly wallet that I've seen. It does things such as having a Bitcoin Cash wallet, a merchant payment gateway they're creating to create a new ecosystem. They're also providing international remittance and mobile money and selling Bitcoin vouchers at brick and mortar stores. They upload contacts from your phone into the application so that it makes it easier to reach people you know. There's a map to allow you to find merchants in your local area that accept Bitcoin Cash and pay there with QR codes, which can be scanned at the merchant point of sale. These are the kinds of things that will make it easier for Bitcoin Cash. And finally, there needs to be some legislative evaluation to make it easier for the Bitcoin Cash and crypto world to grow. Japan is leading the way when it comes to regulation. In April of last year, it became the first country to recognize Bitcoin as a legal payment method. And that has led to a surge in just a year of major merchants and retailers in Japan starting to accept Bitcoin, even the old legacy Bitcoin with its higher transaction fees. Big Camera, the major electronics retailer, Peach Airlines, a discount airline, and Capsule Hotels are among the many merchants that are jumping on the Bitcoin bandwagon in Japan. And that's a sign of what can happen when governments recognize that this is a valid new ecosystem. So those are blocks that I think will come together on the Bitcoin Cash infrastructure to create this vision of e-commerce for all. And I do mean all people, all businesses, all countries. Whether it is from Vietnam, the Philippines, Sub-Saharan Africa, where Centbee is, or anywhere else in the world. Whether it is for my parents when they're in Saigon, Vietnam, or their life now in Cerritos, California. This vision of a e-commerce world can and needs to be for all. It's probably going to be mostly for our next generations, such as my parents' grandkids now, my nephews and niece, as you see here. They'll be using Bitcoin Cash to pay for the frozen yogurt they love, and also to engage in all kinds of transactions we can't even dream of. I invite you to take a look at Bitcoin Cash and really understand why we believe it is powering this powerful new vision of change for all countries, no matter where we're from or where we're going, to enter this world of e-commerce.